Okay, this is a fourth workshop this semester, this month, for fourth Wednesday meeting. And it's as important as the other three. I say that every week. I think this is a very important segment for you to have to be a successful student. Perhaps this one is just as important as the other three. Because if you want to strike fear in the hearts of students anywhere around the world, say the words quiz or test or exam, and immediately we tense up. So today's workshop is hopefully going to give you some information to help you be able to overcome test anxiety and to identify it and take the proper steps to do well on all your tests and quizzes and anything else that comes your way. Timing is particularly good since we're only a couple of weeks away from midterms for any of you who will be having midterms. But we want to talk a little bit today about how to deal with your anxiety and how to do that in an effective manner. Of course, that's one way. That's not the computer, but that's not the most effective way. What is test anxiety? Well, we can just identify it in a number of ways. But when you begin to feel like your head is in a vice, or your stomach is churning, or it's burning up or hurts, and you're sweating, these are physical attributes of anxiety, and these are things that we can look at and we can remember, and it help us to identify when we're beginning to feel test anxiety. When you begin to ask yourselves questions like, have I just studied all this stuff yesterday, why can't I remember it now? You may be suffering from anxiety. Or when you just feel like I can't think about this and you're staring at that paper and your mind is blank, you may be experiencing anxiety. As soon as you leave the test, and all of a sudden all the answers come flooding into your mind, you may have been suffering from test anxiety. And all of this is manageable. Where does anxiety come from? Well, there's some good news about anxiety. And the first good news is that it's not genetic. You weren't born with it. Test anxiety, you can get over it. Secondly, anxiety is something you've learned to do. And because you've learned it, you can unlearn it. You spend a lot of time learning how to be anxious about tests, how to worry about tests, how to act in those physical ways and not remember the answers. So you can take some time and practice on how to learn to handle it. But before we learn something new, we want to look at it just a little more in depth. And anxiety is good for us. It's good that we have anxiety. Every time I get ready to do one of these workshops, I have anxiety. Every time I stand in my pulpit on Sunday morning, I have anxiety. Anytime you're about to face some group of people or do something for the first time or something where you will be judged, you experience some anxiety. But as you look at this chart, you can tell that there's a problem when you begin to experience too much anxiety. When it gets too high, your performance drops off. Some anxiety will help you to perform better. It heightens your senses. It causes you to act more aggressively, and so some anxiety is good. But we want to be able to get that anxiety level at the place where we are performing at our utmost best, and that's in that zone we're looking at on the chart. The chart says that if you have a certain amount of anxiety, you will peak in your performance, and then more anxiety will cause you to drift off and perform more less proficiently. Athletes call it the zone. It's kind of like a runner running a long distance. At some point, you hit that wall and your performance begins to drop. But if you keep going, that runner, if you're in shape, you'll be renewed and get into a zone, and your performance will increase. And that's what we want to do with our anxiety. We want to get our anxiety to a point where we are performing at an optimal level. So how do you get to the zone? Well, there are a number of factors that can increase your performance. In each case, we will be working on reducing stress to get you back into the zone. First factor is physical factors, being able to identify those things and being able to overcome them and to control them. The second is rehearsal, practice, practice, practice. And the third is thought, what you think, can sometimes cause you anxiety. So first, physical factors. First, you need to take care of yourself. You need to take care of those basic health needs and make sure that you're eating right, that you're getting the proper amount of sleep. Remember, we're saying 7 to 8 hours a night of sleep is what you require as an adult. It's no longer just catch sleep as you can. You need to get 7 or 8 hours of optimum sleep and know that you're well rested. Your body will respond better when you're rested, when it's rested. You'll be healthier, you'll be able to think more clearly, you'll be more alert. So we need to stop abusing our bodies and thinking that we can stretch. Remember when we talked about time management, you can stretch the number of hours in a day, but your proficiency will go down. So if you're more proficient, you're actually getting more things done if you're getting the proper amount of rest. So we want to remember not to over-abuse our body, not to take in all the drugs that will slow us down. Caffeine works for some of us part of the time, and eventually too much caffeine will take its toll on us. So even those kinds of things. We want to work in a natural state where distractions are not around us so that we have a heightened level of ability to perform. One thing you want to remember is that sometimes when we think we're experiencing anxiety, it may not actually be anxiety. If we stay up all night drinking tons and tons of coffee to study for a final that we haven't prepared for throughout the semester, then it's probably fatigue and not anxiety that's wearing us down and lack of preparedness. It could be that if we overdose on caffeine, take too much coffee in that night trying to stay awake, that may be a problem as well. So sometimes we blame anxiety when anxiety is not the culprit. So we just want to be aware of what's going on with our own bodies and try to be in control. Beyond the health factors, the physical factors, we also have to learn how to relax. When it comes to our physical environment, sometimes we allow ourselves to be overstraught through learned fear. So how we unlearn it is learning to control our body's reaction. And we've all heard the techniques of causing our bodies to relax by deep breathing and things of that nature. Well, you may think that that's hopeless, but it's true. It works. If we were to stop now and just take in 2 or 3 deep breaths and hold them, each one for 3 or 4 seconds, some people say count up to 8, and then release slowly in the same way. Breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. If you did that 3 or 4 times, you would actually no doubt feel your body begin to relax. If you're sitting at a desk and you feel a little stressed out, if you begin just to relax your muscles, you will begin to feel the stress levels drop. So we can do those physical things. We can learn those exercises, learn those techniques to slow our bodies down to where we can actually perform and think better with less stress. My favorite trick to tell people now is happy place. If you can think of a place where you've been happy and where you've enjoyed something, or you know, my thing was when I was young, I used to like to get home early, and I grew up on a farm, so I would go out into this back field and look down over the hillside, and sit under a tree, and I would just listen to the sounds of the forest in the fall, and you hear the falling leaves and the rustling of the squirrels and whatnot across the ground and in the trees, and you just watch the clouds, and that was my happy place. And still yet, when I get stressed out, I'll take a second, I'll close my eyes, and I'll put myself back on that hillside underneath that tree, and I can just visualize that, I can just feel my senses all feel that experience again, and my stress levels will begin to fall. So if you do that, you pick your happy place, you practice going there. The more often you go there, the faster your stress levels will drop, so that in a time when you need it, for example, when you are facing a quiz or a test, and you feel yourself tensing up, if you go to that happy place, your stress level will drop immediately. So just start practicing that. Find that happy place. You can carry it any place you want to go, and it's always there. So you want to practice those techniques. You want to practice being comfortable and deep breathing. Hold your breath for just a split second and breathe out slowly. Repeat that a few times, and you'll find that your stress levels will drop. So why slow down? Well, let's assume that the problem is that your stress is too high rather than too low. If your stress is too high, you begin to slow your body down, you begin to take control of your heart rate, your breathing rate. All this will cause that anxiety level to decrease, and that increases your performance ability. Because you can think clearer, things, some of those physical signs of forgetting what you've been studying will disappear. Your stomach cramps and your headache will go away, and you'll be able to concentrate. The other thing that we said you wanted to do was rehearse. You want to practice, practice, practice. All these things can be accomplished, but the more you practice them, the easier it is to control your stress levels. So you want to practice controlling your stress levels, whether it be a combination of the happy place and deep breathing, or whatever your method might turn out to be. You want to practice it so that it becomes instantaneous. But you also want to practice being prepared for the test, so that if you do some of the things that we've already talked about before, some of the note-taking skills and in-classroom skills, if you do those things beforehand, you do the pre-reading beforehand, you do the outlining, the highlighting, the notating, and the margins of your notes and in your textbook, you'll find that studying and practicing will be much more easy, will come much more easily. If you do that, and you do the rehearsal or the practice or the review within 24 hours of taking your notes and reading the material, you do the review weekly, then you'll find that studying for those tests or being ready for that pop quiz or exam will be much easier. As we approach midterms, you're thinking, well, I've got a whole 8 weeks of stuff to remember. For some of you, that's a lot of chapters in multiple courses. But if you have been prepared, and even now, at this late date, if you begin to prepare and begin to review your notes, and it'll be a lot easier to pass the midterm and handle the midterm without stress than if you wait to the last minute to try to cram it all in the night before. So practice is important on all those levels. Things won't seem so overwhelming if you do that. It's a lot easier, people say, to do familiar things than it is to do brand new things. So if you practice, 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 it's like driving a car. The first time you get into a car, you may have had difficulty driving it. But the more you practice, the more you did it, the easier it became, and now it's probably second nature to you. The same thing applies to controlling your stress. or doing the work in the classroom. The more you practice something just the way you will have to perform it, the easier it becomes. Many people report anxiety when they have to perform without adequate practice. This is because they're not used to it. It's like a new thing. So we practice, practice, practice. I'm going to throw this story in. I skipped the first one, but this one talks about, because one of our problems that we seem to tense up in is in math and in word problems. This student goes to a math class and is taught A plus B equals C. She studies at home over and over again, A plus B equals C. A plus B equals C. A plus B equals C. Then she gets to the test and she sees the equation A equals C minus B. And it's thrown her because she didn't see it exactly that way in class. But if we practice, 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 and we practice all the variables, then things like that won't throw us. And that's how we turn that practice into our favor in math classes and things of that nature. We have to think a little bit. If you've seen enough of it, it won't be quite as big a surprise when it pops up in a different format on a quiz or an exam. So you practice, practice, practice. There are three basic kinds of tests: multiple choice, essay, and concept learning or story problems. And it's the concept learning or story problems, particularly in math again, that seem to give us the biggest amount of difficulty. Each test requires different kinds of practice because we're asking for different kinds of responses. The instructor that asks these questions are usually looking for particular types of insight in their students. Multiple choice tests are also referred to as objective tests, the true-false test, short answer test, or matching. And they're asking you to know how discrete bits of information are connected. Like 1492 connects to Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Little bits and bytes of information relate to each other, and that's what objective tests are looking for. With short answers, it allows you to match them or true-false them. So you practice those. You practice those by using flashcards or something related to flashcards, where people can ask you a question or give you a phrase or a word, and you give a quick and short response. Essay tests ask you to tell how things are related or are not related. They'll ask things like, they'll ask for contrast and compare, or describe and discuss. So when you see words like that on a test, the instructor is asking for a more in-depth response. 2 or 3 sentences on each of those. Contrast and compare, or compare and contrast. Tell the things that are alike about two different things and how they are different. Describe and discuss tells you to describe something and then talk about it, how it relates to the overall topic, or what it does good, or what you know about it. So you write more on an essay test. Outlining and understanding main points and how they are connected works best for tests that are going to be of that nature, essay nature, because you have then the main topic, and then you have the supporting points, and you sometimes points below that, and then you can use each of those as a sentence to talk about that main topic. So you tell what the main topic is, and then you lifted up, supported with the points that were made below. So outlining works real well for that. Concept learning asks you to show what you know, that you know how the concept is set and that you're able to use it. Math story problems ask us how much gas will we use from drive from here to Louisville, Kentucky in a car that burns 33 miles per gallon, and the distance is. And I ask you to think about it and describe it and tell us the answer, so you understand the concept. Using the concept in a different way than it was discussed, that C equals B plus A is the same as A plus B equals C. Just talk about it, show them, so that you can use it and work out the answer. Studying the concepts from different angles and views to see how they connect to each other works best. So you study all of the concepts, look for how it relates to the topics in general, and then you talk about it. And always begin by studying first. The best way to reduce anxiety is to practice in the same way you were asked before. So if you know that your instructor is going to ask multiple choice questions or true-false questions, then flashcards or something of that nature will work best for you in studying for that exam. If you know that they're going to ask essay questions, then studying your outline will work best, because it gives you the main point plus all the supporting points. But first, you have to study the material. You have to study the material. So we don't wait till the last minute to cram. We study all semester long, and that helps us to reduce our stress overall. This also means that you might study ahead and actually be in front of the instructor a little bit. We should always have read the assignment when we come into class, but it wouldn't hurt to also have read the beginning of the next part of the next assignment, so we understand how it interlocks, and we can even ask questions that stem from that advanced reading. After you study the material and know it, then you practice some more. You practice like you're taking a test. Ask yourself sample questions, or make up sample questions that you think might be on the exam. Look for those clues in the instructor's lecture as they talk about what things, and watch for what excites them, or those clues we were talking about the other day, as they point at something on the board, or they underscore it, or they repeat it several times. Those are things that most likely will be on the exam, so you want to study those things and become more familiar with them. If you work up a practice test, then time yourself in as you take it, so that you know how long it takes for you to respond to 20 questions on this particular topic, or how long it takes to match 20 questions, or answer true-false questions, or answer 4 or 5 essay questions. As you practice, look for any information that you're missing about the topic or the question, so that you can then go back and look it up, find it, and expand your base of knowledge. That way, when you sit down at the real test, you've covered all those bases, and you won't get quite so stressed out when you use that term. And then we ask you to practice a little more. After you've identified the weak areas, study more, then practice again. If you're unsure that you have studied everything, then go back and look at it again. Ask the instructor for an appointment to talk about what you know, what you don't know, or sometimes even asking them what kinds of things will be on the exam a few days before the exam helps. They may give you some generalizations. They won't tell you exactly the questions, but they may give you enough information to narrow your scope to help you be able to practice what you need to be looking at. Make a list of things that you don't know. And then ask the instructor if the list of things that you know is complete, or ask for clarification on the things that you are still weak in. If you ask the question, what's on the test, teachers are not going to respond as openly as we might hope. They may be very general. They don't particularly like that question, but they don't mind going over the types of things and trying to help you narrow your study. So, study and practice. Find your weak points and study and practice some more. And what you think is what you get. This is the third point that we were talking about. Our thought process sometimes can cause us great difficulty when it comes to stress. So if we want to reduce our stress, our test anxiety, we want to think about how we think. If we think right off the bat that we are going to do poorly on an exam, then you can pretty much count on doing poorly on the exam. Our thoughts have a way of coming true. If you wait till the last day to study for that exam, then you're pretty much guaranteed that your thought process of doing poorly on it is going to come true. If you begin at the beginning of the semester and do the things that we've talked to you about already, and you do your pre-reading and you read all your assignments, you do the outlining and the note-taking, and you sit in the proper places in the classroom, and you ask questions and become engaged in the class, and you stay up with your assignments because you get them all on your calendar and you've been through the syllabus. Then as you approach the exams, you'll find that you'll be prepared and you'll be much more energized, and you'll feel energized. You'll feel ready, and you won't have that sense of being overwhelmed. Some people will wait to that last minute, feel like they just can't get prepared, and say to themselves, since I may not have enough time to study everything, it might be that what I study won't even be on the test, and they'll just talk themselves down and out of applying themselves. So the ideal is to be prepared from the beginning and begin to prepare in the beginning and stay prepared the whole time. If you don't think about freezing up during the exam, you won't freeze up during the exam. But if you think that I prepared poorly before even, and I just can't learn this, the chances are that you're going to live that out and you're not going to do well on the exams, even if you do know the material. Let's see where. This is a psychological truism. Psychologists and great thinkers who study humanity like to believe that they know lots about people. The truth is, we don't know that much. But here's one thing we do know. What you think will happen has a dramatic and often direct effect on how you behave. So if you think negatively, if you think you will fail, if you think you won't have time to get prepared, then you won't get prepared, and you will fail to bring that to fruition. We want to practice. Imagine yourself succeeding in class, succeeding as you take the test. You want to see yourself doing well as you practice. You want to see the material as it relates to you and your life, and you want to know that you're prepared and that you're ready for whatever the instructor puts on the exam. If you think positively, you're most likely to get positive results. You reduce test anxiety by eliminating those negative messages to yourself, by sometimes doing even simple things like staying away from negative people before the exam begins. People like to cluster in the hallways and outside of rooms and talk about what they don't know and how tough the exam is going to be before exam sometimes. So you might want to avoid those people so that they don't plant negative thoughts in your mind, because you are prepared. You've practiced. You looked at the types of questions and you've answered those questions, and you've been over the material from the beginning to the end of the process. And so now you know that you have positive images in your mind. So don't let anybody steal those images and plant negative thoughts and cause you undue anxiety. If you can imagine yourself doing a good job, if you can see yourself doing a good job, chances are that you'll be able to actually relax a little bit more, use those techniques that we talked about a little bit before, and your test anxiety will be reduced. So the first key to reducing test anxiety is good basic health: eating, sleeping, exercising, and avoiding mood enhancing foods or drinks like caffeine and alcohol, particularly on your day of your test. If you're in a classroom where they'll allow you to bring in snacks and whatnot on the day of the test, have those available. Get that little extra boost of energy. It also helps you to relax, drink water, and that will help you to relax as well. But by all means, get plenty of sleep the night before. Studying in advance and practicing the way you think the test is going to be will help you to do well on the test. It will help you to get into that zone we were talking about stress-wise, where your skills are heightened and your performance shows it. You now know how to study for different exams, put that into practice, and that will lower your stress levels and increase your performance. Learning a stress management technique can help you to reduce symptoms of anxiety and stress. So remember deep breathing and practice that. Remember those soothing imagery we talked about, that happy place. Quiet time, just whatever you do to relax, think about that, perform it, and practice those things, and that will help you slow your body down and slow down the physical side of anxiety and help to make you a lot more proficient. You want to think realistic, positive thoughts. If you're not cracked the book, you haven't taken a note, and you haven't been to class, thinking that you'll do well on the exam by itself won't get the job done. But if you've been to class, you've read the assignments, you've done all the proper study skills beforehand, and you practice, then you ought to be able to envision yourself as being successful on the exam. And if you rehearse that and rehearse the questions, then you'll be just fine. We hope that you found something in this quick segment today that will help you to relax, to reduce your stress, to not be fright-stricken when you hear the words test, exam, or quiz. As we look at midterms, that you can go back and rehearse, practice. You still have lots of time, and you'll find that you'll be a successful student. Much of this presentation was created by Dr. Donald Wasson, Director of the Texas Women's University Counseling Center, and this presentation was created for educational purposes only. Thanks for taking your lunchtime and stopping by, viewing it online. We hope that it's been helpful.